Yeah, my name's John Shire, and I'm a senior security advisor at Sophos, working out of the office of the CTO. And my role at Sophos is really to look at security as an industry, security landscape in general, and not just at the threats. While those are really important, it's also important to look at the entire context of security to understand what's happening and then how to better protect yourself. So when we look at the threat landscape, there's a lot of dangerous things out there. There's lots of threats. Every single day we're seeing over 400,000 new threats at Sophos Labs. But a few things kind of jump to mind. We're seeing a changing in tactics from the ransomware folks, that they're going to a more targeted ransomware model. By that I mean, they're not just sending out a whole bunch of phishing emails. Some of them still are doing that, but some of these groups are sending out or are looking for vulnerable systems to attack and breach companies. And then instead of maybe getting a couple infections per company, they're encrypting the whole lot. So it's really having a major impact. Some of the other trends that we're seeing are related to supply chain compromise. If you're a smaller company that's in partnership with maybe a larger multinational company, it's just as important for you to be able to protect yourself with the same tools that the larger companies are using, because the cyber criminals are going to go after you to get at the bigger guys. So it's no longer the case that I'm small, nobody wants to come after me. Because you're small, you're actually just as much of a target as the big guys. Yeah, so with synchronized security, the importance there is having this system that works with the endpoints and the network together. Yes, we see threats on the endpoints, and yes, that's really where the rubber meets the road in terms of where the breaches occur and where a lot of the bad stuff happens. But the threats also need networks in order to propagate themselves, in order to get from, a cyber criminal to get from point A to point B, lateral movement, or even to just spread it themselves far and wide, as we saw with things like Wanneer, being able to exploit SMB shares across the internet, doing IP scans, those kinds of things. So having a system that has contextual information about both the endpoint side and the network side, having firewalls that can react and protect the network as a whole is really important. That's why synchronized security is of benefit to users and companies alike. The biggest piece of advice that I start with always is set up your company with a solid security foundation. That means doing those best practices pieces right. Making sure you're patching, making sure you're using the principle of least privileges, having backups, specifically in the case of ransomware, right? Having that solid security foundation helps you really get rid of a lot of the low quality threats out there. The next step then is to use state-of-the-art technology in order to protect against the more complex and more pervasive threats that are happening out there. We see threats like Emotet, for example, that while it's been around since 2014, has continued to evolve itself, has continued to improve itself, and technology is keeping pace with that. And so using things like deep learning, using things like Intercept X for anti-exploit and anti-ransomware are going to take you to that next step in terms of protecting against today's threats and tomorrow's menaces as well. So speaking of Intercept X, let us show you how you can use that technology specifically to block against all the latest threats, but also get better visibility with our EDR product to see what systems are affected in your environment, how better to protect them and remediate them.
The most important part of the Threat Analysis Center is to know what happens and how we can prevent it in the future. Therefore, I will give a short demo. We have the Threat Analysis Center in Sophos Central. A big insight is all the malware that passed by and was stopped by Sophos. You can click on it to get a global overview, a more general overview on what really happened. You can further investigate it. You know the basis, the IP address on which it started, the root cause, and also the user who was responsible for this malware passing by. And afterwards, you can drill down and get more information, more insights on something malicious or not malicious, and how you can stop it on other devices.